Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Once again, taking you through some basic maintenance on a flea market find. I'm doing these videos to encourage you to put tackle back into circulation, hence the name Second Chance Tackle. Today I'm going to work on a Penn 104C spinning reel. This reel has been around for about 15 years, and I was fortunate enough to find some of these at a local flea market. I want to take you through the basic disassembly, maintenance, check for operations, and lubrication and repair. So the 104C was introduced as a lower level Penn reel. It was made in Japan, and it kind of follows the same setups as a Penn Silver Series or a Ryobi was also popular in those periods. The first thing I suggest in my videos is that you wear the latex gloves when repairing these. Never quite sure what you're going to find inside these reels, and these kind of protect your hands from the oils and the chemicals that may be in there. In addition to that, some of the commonly used stuff that I repair with is in the background. You can see the Penn reel grease, turtle wax chrome polish, WD-40, Purple Power, which is a degreaser, and Reel X, which is reel lube. So let's get started with this one. These reels are durable. They're metal based. They're not graphite. They have a single ball bearing, which is up on in the spool carrier. 2 bushings. The handles can either be screw in or they can be attached by a through screw on the other side. In this case, the handle screws through to the main gear, and it's removed by turning the handle clockwise. I recommend that you have a parts tray at all times. I simply use a bottom of a milk container, a gallon milk container, and I store my parts in there so that they're easy to find, and it's a nice organization step for repair. So let's take the gear cover off. On the gear cover, it's on the drive side, and this one happens to be attached by 3 Phillips head screws. So as I've mentioned in other videos, if you have a mechanical screw gun, you can use that, but in the case of this, it's only 3 screws. It's not very difficult to do. If I was doing these in mass and my arms are tired or something, yeah, I would go ahead and go do that. So those 3 screws are there, taken aside. That brings the side plate off. The side plate then would show you the gear assemblies. In this case, it's a pretty simple gear setup. It has the main gear. It has a connector for the main shaft, and that main shaft connector will drive the spool up and down during rotation. There's a center pin that releases the carrier. You remove that, and then you remove the carrier behind that. I always put that off to the side for orientation, even though most of these seem to be symmetrical. I put that down so that I know that's the top of the assembly. And then you have the gear drive, and the gear drive comes out, the main gear, and you can see there's a bushing behind there, which just popped out as well. So that takes care of the innards. On the inside of this one, you'll also see the second bushing on that drive side. So let's get the spool off now. The easiest way to take the spool off is to remove the screw that connects the center shaft. And once you remove that screw, that center shaft and spool assembly will just pull right out of the top. Now, if I was just looking to do the bearings and the like, I would just leave that attached as is. However, I'm going to take this spool off because I will show you how to do the drags that are inside the spool as well. So I'm going to, again, I'll put the parts in my container there, and that leaves me the bail carrier as an assembly. This one is attached by a screw to the pinion drive, a nut by the pinion drive, and I'm just going to remove that. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. There you go. All right, that'll take that off, and that will expose the pinion drive and the assembly for the anti-reverse. I would like to check these for dirt and make sure that everything is okay there. If that is the case, what we'll do is we'll remove the anti-reverse dog, which is a flat-headed screwdriver. This one has a friction anti-reverse. It has two pieces of metal that grab and come back as it's returned. Again, I like to lay these down in the orientation that it came from and the associated part next to it so that I am aware of it. Next off is the assembly for the anti-reverse. And then I'm down to the ball bearing. So the ball bearing is held together by two Phillips head screws. Again, keeping the pieces and parts together on these for orientation. I also found that if you're not that comfortable doing this, or if you don't do it that frequently, use the camera on your smartphone to take pictures at the various stages. What that'll enable you to do is to know where the parts go if you've lost the orientation on those. Okay, so once the holding assembly comes, you can pull out the gearing assembly, which is the ball bearing and the main drive. Check for any broken gearing along the way, make sure that it's all fluid. And in this case, it's basic maintenance, so all I'm going to use on that is a high-performance reel grease. This one happens to be Realex. I'm going to make sure that it gets lubricated well, and then return that right to the seating that it had before. So one of the things I find when I buy flea market reels is the number one failure of these reels tends to be that they're not greased. They've sat around for a while, the grease has evaporated, and it's caused the reels to retrieve in a hard way. The number two failure, quite interestingly enough, is there's too much grease, and that the grease is coagulated, and it actually forms a barrier that inhibits the reel from turning. So regardless of what it is, either way you can work it. If there was, this one was clean. If it was too much grease, I would recommend using a WD-40 or something similar to break up some of that coagulation, and then I would be at the step that we were just at there with releasing it. Back, putting the dog drag anti-reverse piece in. This, again, it's a friction close, so you want to get that onto the piece and then reseat this and restore the gear piece. And then generally, if you just turn it, you'll see that it's working, so that you don't have to reassemble the whole thing to find out that something was sticking. With that done, you can go ahead and put the carrier back on. The carrier nut. Some of these have a stop nut to prevent the carrier nuts from moving over excessive wear and the like. This one does not. And then we can get to the inside for the maintenance. So the first thing that I look at is, are the parts clean, and is there anything inhibiting these? In this case, this is a carrier that is fine. This runs in a channel. Second thing I look at is the condition of the gears. We already took a look at the pinion gear up top. That was fine, but that could use a little lubrication, so I'm going to use my reel grease and lightly grease it. Then going to return the reel shaft. Secure that with the screw that we took out. Now sometimes if the reel shaft is in the way, you would reseat your main gear before that, but my experience on this reel has been that it doesn't get in the way. Then you would examine your main shaft, make sure that it's clean. Sometimes there's a lot of debris in here, sometimes there's a lot of excess lubrication over time that's dried up. In this case, the reel shaft and that is fine. Simply put a little bit more of your grease on there for the turning surfaces on both sides. Reseat the gear in the bushing, and then reinstall the carrier. Remember, we had that orientation up on this one, so we know how it goes. And then the pin goes into the carrier on the other side. So, pretty easy to do, but a flea market find that was a couple of dollars is ready to go fishing again, hence the name Second Chance Tackle. I'm going to put the 3 of these back on. Now this reel on the outside was clean. I've got a little bit of grease on there now, but sometimes you find them, they've been sitting on a boat for a while or in a garage, they've gotten dusty. Sometimes the lubrication has dried up and shellacked. If that's the case, something like Purple Power, which you see in the background there, is a good general degreaser that can be used to clean these reels up as best they can. These reels were metal based and painted. They do have a tendency to show some corrosion if they've been out on the ocean, but in this case we're doing fine. So, and then I like to check them before I do too much more. In this case it turns smoothly. It shows that the lube is working and doing exactly what I wanted it to do. And then you install it, you turn the handle counterclockwise. Give it a trial, make sure it's doing what you want it to do. I notice that this handle is a little bit squeaky. The squeaky wheel gets the oil, so I use WD-40 on handles as that frees that up in a hurry. Last thing I want to show you is how to repair check and repair the drags if that's a problem. The drags are located in the center of the spool and they're held in with a retaining clip. I've taken the retaining clip out and then I pull the drags. And the most important piece here is to visually inspect these. There is some minor corrosion in there, so I'm going to grab a piece of steel wool and just a quick circle should bring most of that out. And we're clean there. These happen to be Teflon drags, and in Teflon drag cases, no maintenance is required. If you were using a Penn like 4500 series, sometimes those drags come with fabric drags, and if that's the case, you do want to make sure that they are lubed. But with Teflon drags, no lubrication is required. These I'm finding just have a little bit of sand, it seems, residual, so I'm just wiping those off with my fingers, but they'll work fine. And then I'm just replacing these. There is one that has ears on it. That one goes in the center of the drag stack. It prevents the whole piece from falling, and you can see those in those 2 slots. And then the last drag, top washer, and reversing it again, putting the holding clip back in, placing that back on the shaft, and then putting the wheel top above it. So there you have it. A flea market find for a couple of dollars, a few minutes worth of disassembly, visual